Hello, Mary from Home Sweet Home Creations here, and I am here to read you a little story and then talk to you about some ways that we can nurture ourselves and others um, and build our self-esteem. So one thing that as parents and taking responsibility for our children and making sure that they learn the things they need to learn to live life and to be part of our families, and when they grow up to be able to be part of a work environment, and then hopefully later their own families. One of the things that we do as parents is teach our children appropriate times for food, when we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner in our homes, when we take baths or showers, when we go to bed, what we wear, when we are going to be going to bed, and just daily life skills is what we're teaching our kids every day. And so usually you would have your rules, your house rules, and then you would follow through with those. So this little book that I'm going to read you, I'm just going to show you how you can use other tools to teach your children besides the things that you know and the rules that you set. Sometimes you can find books that will teach that same thing, and it helps the child identify and understand it better, and it makes it fun for them and for you. And then sometimes you might read that little book each night to remind them what their process is going to be for going to bed. So this one is called Good Night. And I remember reading this to my children when they were little. And it's all about what we do when we go to bed. And this was written by Emma Dryden and illustrated by Richard Colding. Okay. And it was written long ago, because I've had this for a long time. And I can tell by the way that it's been used. It's a used book, but it starts out like this. It's a time to put away your toys. Good night, little kitten. It's time to take a bath. Good night, little raccoon. So these are animal stories. Okay, so you can read that and show them the pictures, show them what they're doing, and you could even ask them questions so that they understand it, unless they're too little to talk. Then they might want to try. It's time to put on your pajamas. Good night, little beaver. It's time to brush your teeth. Good night, little puppy. And there they are. The puppy and the beaver. Okay. It's time to listen to a bedtime story. Good night, little bear. It's time for hugs and kisses. Good night, little bunny. And there they are. It's time to go to sleep. Sleep tight, everyone. And there they are, going to sleep. All right. So that's a simple little book, but it's very helpful when you're teaching your children a routine every night. And it's good to have a routine for your kids. Kids want routine so they know what to expect. So this book is very helpful for that particular thing. There's all sorts of books out there for teaching children all the things that we as parents would teach them, but when we teach it and confirm it with a book, sometimes that makes it more helpful, but also more fun for the kids, because you're not just saying, these are our rules and we do boom, 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 boom. And, this way you could say, this is how we get ready for bed. And it's a fun, colorful little book to show them. Okay. So, the 7 ways of nurturing self-esteem in others is what we're talking about. Because in order to encourage your children and help them have good self-esteem growing up, we also need to have good self-esteem. And sometimes we need some help with that, because maybe things happen in our lives that made us not feel really great about ourselves, or our ability to parent, or our ability to teach our children. Maybe we don't think we have the skills, or we don't have the right knowledge. But one thing that we can do as parents is try to look at ourselves and our life and heal some of those things that maybe were keeping us from having good self-esteem. So the first one is giving personal attention. Everyone needs to have some kind of personal attention, or they don't feel valued. Okay. So we need to listen to others and learn to listen respectfully. And we need to do that for us as adults. We like to have someone listen to us and know that they're listening to us. But we also need to do that for our children, because our children need to know that when, even before they can speak, they are trying to tell us something with their cries, with their whining, with their whatever abilities they have to try and get your attention and let you know what they want. They're trying to tell us something. Eventually they will learn the words, and that's also something that we as parents need to do, is to tell them the words that they are not sure about yet. Like, if they're obviously angry and they're upset, you would say, oh, you are upset, Joey? Are you angry? Are you hungry? Do you want something to eat? All of those words that we give our children to use is how they learn to communicate. If children don't get that, they don't get the words from their parents that they need to be able to develop their language and express how they're feeling, or what they're needing, what they want, they will grow up without language and delayed language. And some kids will delay their language a little bit if they have older siblings who talk for them. So a lot of times we need to encourage the other siblings to help them say the words. So if you repeat these words to children, then ask them to repeat it back to you, and that's how they learn to use their language. So instead of just saying, stop your whining, be quiet, I'll get you something, but you're not sure that that's what they needed. But if you're saying, well, it looks like you're hungry because you're going in the refrigerator. Are you hungry? Can you say hungry? And they say hungry. maybe not when they're very tiny, but by the time they're, one and a half, they start doing a little bit of words, and then they start putting words together. So we have to think about how we're speaking to our children, just like how we take in things that people say to us. So really having a good listening skills is important. So when your kids get older and they come to you and they want to tell you something important to them, that you take the time to actually sit and listen, and not always speaking and telling them what you think, or be angry or upset because they did something, but to really listen to them and maybe ask them some questions about how they felt about that. If they're coming to you as a teenager, after you've had this kind of relationship with them, they're going to be able to tell you if something went wrong in their life somewhere. If they did something wrong, they're not going to be so afraid to come to you, because you started very young to communicate those things with them, to open up, to make them feel loved and comfortable in talking to you, so that they will feel comfortable coming to you when something important is happening and they need to let you know. So we have to start somewhere, and since we're doing younger children, the toddler age group right now, you would start very simple in a lot of actions and hugging and encouraging. And some people who know sign language, they will use signing while they're speaking, so they know the words and the actions. I don't know how to sign language, how to use sign language. My daughters do it, and so I think a lot of people use their hands, when they're speaking. My family is a big hand speaking group, but they just do that. But they actually know some sign language words, and they use that in schools now, in like preschool and kindergarten. They start pretty young using some of that more than they used to. Here in our community, we have a deaf and blind school, so you will see more of that here, because they actually are in our community, and kids are going to that school and helping, and we have a big special ed or Special Olympics community. So kids here are used to seeing more kids that have special needs, or have are using sign language and different things. So it just depends on where you are. It's really good for kids to get exposed to that, so that they understand. So there are some people that are different, and that they have some special needs that you might not have. So giving personal attention. Important to be a good listener for the adults and the children. To demonstrate respect. So when your child is coming to you, and they want your attention, and they're saying, "Mommy, mommy, mommy," and we are maybe over the top with whatever's happening at that moment, and we say, "Just be quiet." And the child cowers and goes away. Okay, so sometimes as a parent, you might not have it all together all the time. You might, lash out in frustration and yell at your child. But when you realize that child was hurt by that, you disrespected them by not identifying what it is they needed. But at the same time, there are times when children have to wait for things. So going to them afterwards and being able to mend that, it makes a huge difference. So just say, Mommy was really frustrated and I really could not get you what you needed at that time. And I'm sorry that I couldn't stop what I was doing and really listen to you. So can you tell me now what it is you needed? So they know that you haven't totally disregarded them and their needs. You just at that moment could not do what they needed. So it is important that we all try our best to, be in control as often as we can, so that we're not. I was going through sauces. So that we're not lashing out and hurting our children without mending that. So it can be mended. It's just a matter of, at the moment, what's going on. So stopping, thinking about it for a minute, taking some breaths and saying, oh, I need to go back and, figure out this situation. Also, encouraging healthy achievements. So for ourselves as adults, living our lives, we have to encourage ourselves to be healthy adults and achieve goals, and to look forward to getting to a certain place in our lives, in our careers, or in our whatever, our art, our parenting, our coaching, whatever it is that we're doing. We want to have healthy achievement. So we want to show our children that we are moving forward. We're looking at doing something and being successful at it, and then encouraging them to also have that in each of their as they grow in their ages and stages of life. Every stage they're in, there's certain things that they will achieve, like crawling and walking, talking, and all of the things that they will achieve in each stage of their life. We as parents should be encouraging that. We should be celebrating that. We should be really engaged in teaching them those, so that they can be healthy, successful babies, toddlers, preschoolers, kindergartners, elementary students, and even in our society, that they're successful in their sports that they might choose, or in their interests in music or activities. All of those things are our job as parents to encourage and to help them achieve and feel good about themselves as they get older and go through each stage of life. And we want the same thing. We want to be encouraged, and we want people to recognize the good qualities we have. We need each other to do that. We are made to be with other people, or we would be living in the desert alone. But we don't. We are made to be together. We are made to love each other and our neighbors and our communities, and we want to teach that to our children. So the other thing is providing a sensible structure. So when we're talking about sensible structure, to explore and grow, human beings need limits, guidance, and rules that are enforced consistently and fairly. So a sensible structure. So that can be determined on who the parent is. So what I think is sensible may not be what you think is sensible. And so your rules could be different than my rules. Um, but in the bottom line is we want rules that are sensible, rules that are enforced consistently and fairly. So if we were to expect a 2-year-old child to pick up all of their toys by themselves, that probably wouldn't be sensible. They're not quite ready to do that. They can help, but to clean up all the toys by themselves, they need encouragement and they need practice and they need to get a little bigger and figure out where things go. So we have to be reasonable in those rules and expectations. So in adulthood, we want the same thing. In our adult lives, we don't want to have rules put on us that are unreasonable. Like you're going to work 20 hours a day. I get 4 hours of sleep. That's it. That's not reasonable. Or you're going to do your work and Jody's work and Sally's work all this week because they're having a bad week. So you're going to cover all 3 of their jobs. Well, that's not very, very reasonable either. So as adults, we want rules that make sense, that are reasonable. We might put in a little extra because we're just that kind of person. Maybe we do a little extra that compared to somebody else. But having someone expect that of you, that it's over what you can do, that makes it unreasonable and hard for you to be in that job and be happy. So there are a lot of rules in the world, and we don't all like the rules that there are. Legal rules we all have to follow, or we get in trouble and we end up with the punishment. So the same thing happens here. Consistency is important with your children. If you have a rule that we go to bed at 8 o'clock and we keep letting our kids stay up till 10, and then they're crabby and they're not in their routine and they don't want to go to bed, then really the parent is at fault because they haven't been consistent in what their role is. There are some things that are going to be flexible when there's certain things going on. You're on vacation, you're at someone else's home, and there's activity going on of some kind, a big activity. Though sometimes in those situations you can't really control all of that. But the more consistent you can be, the better for the child. And they like routine and they like to know what is happening and what the rules are. So that's one of the other ones that provide a sensible structure. Now, the next one is appreciate the benefits of a multicultural society. Diversity is a source of strength. So, in this particular instance, this is all about probably a lot of what's going on, has been going on my whole life, that it depends on where you live, who you're exposed to, and what do you know about the world. So if you're somebody who lives in the big city, you probably have experienced multiple cultures in your life, in your jobs, in where you go, and in maybe in school, in where you go recreate. So it just depends. And if you live somewhere there's not as many different cultures, but there's some cultures you might know. Like here in our community, we have a lot of Native Americans. And so a lot of us know that culture. We know we have friends and people we work with, but we also have a military base here. So actually, we have two military bases. We have the Guard and we have Air Force. So we have lots of people that come here from other places and other cultures. And so really, we're exposed more than people might think because of the bases, and they come into our schools, so our kids get to know them, and other people who move here from other places. So it just depends on where you live. And some people never, ever knew anyone who was, like when I moved here, I was from California. I knew a lot of different types of people and different cultures. But when I came here, the main culture that I had not been exposed to was Native American. Even though I have a Native American in me from California, it was a totally different thing because people just didn't. We don't have the reservations and things there, so you don't know who's that culture is just not as big there. In fact, the tribe that I was related to is no longer exists. So coming here, I lived in California. There was a lot of Hispanic people, which I also have in me. So I have everything. But we do, as parents, that's our job, to expose our kids to the things that we think are important. And most people think that is important because in our world, there are many cultures. And now that we are online all the time, we are engaging with people all over the world. And my children, having grandparents that came from Europe, they knew more about the world and where things were in the world than a lot of kids because their grandparent talked to them about it. And so history is super important, and passing it down to your children from grandparents to generation is where some children will learn a lot of that. If you don't have grandparents or anything like anyone that is handing that down to you, when you go to school, you will learn all sorts of things about different cultures. And in our culture, in this community, we actually have some Native American history in our schools. So there's a program that teaches that to our community and our kids, and it is, there's so much history. When I was in California, it was all about California history and the missions and the Spaniards coming in, which is where my Spanish heritage came from. So, really, besides the school teaching, within our families we're teaching these types of things. So we have to think about what is it we want our children to be doing when they walk out of the house. What types of words are we using in our homes? What types of things are we teaching our children to say? And other than that, most kids love everyone. They love people. And unless they're influenced in some other way by their parent or somebody else they know, they are going to be loving and kind and wanting to know everyone. And so we as parents have to really make that effort to make sure that we're being respectful in our words. Because everything we say, they're going to repeat. Believe me. They may not be doing it at one, but when they hit the door of the school and they've heard those words, they will be repeating it. So we really have to be conscious of that. Appreciating the benefits of Oh, we just did that. Okay. Let's see. Negotiate conflict. So when I was talking about when the mother could not stop what she was doing and address the child and just said, stop whining and go away. So to go back and work that out with that child is the proper thing to do to bring that conflict to a healthy place, because it's not something worth the child feeling bad about, because it wasn't anything really that he did or she did wrong, and you just couldn't take the time to take those deep breaths and say, okay, what do you need? At that moment you just didn't do that, so you can go back and fix that conflict. Same thing with how we behave as adults. If we've been injured or shamed by something someone did in our environment at work or in our families, we don't really like that. It's just, makes us feel bad when somebody humiliates us or shames us, and so we have to be aware of ourselves and what we do to other adults and our children, and because we want to treat them the way we would want to be treated. And if we go to work and everyone laughs at you and says, you're just like, you can't even spell weird. What's wrong with you? Right? And shames us because maybe we couldn't spell weird. In fact, I may have spelled that wrong on something I just wrote. So, the problem with this is that there are people out there that have some difficulties in reading or writing or things like that. In fact, I have 2 children who had dyslexia, so I'm very familiar with how that can affect the child and what the society does with that. It's really important that you as the parent can advocate for that child and understand what's going on with them, so that you can advocate for them in school, advocate for them wherever they happen to be, where that difficulty might come into play. And eventually, you will teach them to advocate for themselves. That is the best way to do it. Because once they can advocate for themselves, they can grow up and be a healthy adult and say, this is who I am. And I'm not good at that, but I am super good at remembering things. So we have to look at all of the things about ourselves and our children that are pluses, and the things that are just a little more difficult. And we need to be, as parents, uplifting them, not shaming them and pushing them down and making them feel embarrassed. Because there are plenty of people out there that will do that. They're not going to be the advocate always for your children just because they are their teacher, just because they are their coach, just because they are their uncles or grandparents. Sometimes you, as the parent, have to educate all the adults in their life, and you first have to educate yourself about it. So we have to be careful about that. How do we treat each other? Other adults treat each other. How do we do that in front of our children? They're watching everything we do. So if we can be healthy adults and we can overcome some of the things that are our baggage that we came into parenting with, then we can be better parents, and we can give more healthy things to our children as they grow up. And the last one is encouraging autonomy and competence. So that's a little bit of what I just was saying. We want to encourage them to grow beyond where they're at, that they can do anything that they put their mind to do, that we want to encourage them to grow and move upward in their life, whatever it is that they choose they like to do. Some people believe they should all be football players, or all my boys are going to play basketball, or all my girls are going to be ballerinas. But when it comes right down to it, you will learn that the child will do only what they really have a desire to do. So no matter how many things you put them in, the thing that they want to do the most is going to stand out. I had a daughter who physically she could have probably done any sport she wanted to, but she didn't have that desire. She skied really well, but she did not have the desire to be an Olympic gymnastics person. So when she got pushed to go in that direction, she didn't want to do that. So you do have to sometimes give up what your dream for that child is, because they have a dream within them, and it may not be the one that you think it should be. But you still have to encourage them and love them through that. And so those are 7 ways to self-esteem for yourself and for your children. And some of that will take some time. Hopefully, if you're here, you're going to start looking at some of your life baggage that you need to maybe heal from, so that you can let go of it and not pass it on. Just break the chain now. And that's what I chose when I had children, that I wanted to learn as much as I could about a different way to parent. And that's why I got involved in parenting classes. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk to you about today was being a person of integrity. So living with integrity is essential. I'm going to read this because it's super interesting and it's worded really well here. Living with integrity is essential to value ourselves. One important aspect of integrity is being honest in our dealings with other people, which requires being honest with ourselves. This does not mean using abrasive or destructive language or behavior. Brutal honesty. Some people think it's okay to just spew honesty on everyone and hurt their feelings, or maybe address something that is not, they're not ready to talk to them about anyways. And I used to do that. I had to learn not to do that. Instead, it means speaking our truth plainly and without blaming anyone for our feelings, thoughts, and actions. So we have to consider that when we're dealing with our children. We need to be honest with them because we want them to be honest with us. But if we ask them to be honest with us and we're angry at them and we're raging at them, they're probably going to find a way to not tell you the truth. And eventually the lie becomes a lie, and the lie upon the lie upon the lie upon the lie. And then they forget what the lie was, and then you catch them in the lie. But this is all learned behavior. So if we teach our kids to be honest and truthful, they will tend to be honest and truthful with you and be comfortable talking to you and coming to you for things that they need in their life. If they are, and it really depends on who's in your family. If you have one child that is the youngest child, sometimes the older ones will blame that child for something because it's easier to blame them instead of telling the truth. And sometimes it takes them a while before they tell the truth. They don't want the consequence, whatever your consequence would be, your role and your discipline. But it's not a good habit to tell lies, because it's just, like I said, a lie upon a lie. And that happens to a lot of addicts and alcoholics. And it doesn't matter what your drug is, your food, addictions, whatever your addiction is. Addiction is a little complicated. I'm not going to get into too much of it, but as a parent, it's if that is an issue for you, you really need to address that first. In order to be a healthy parent, you need to be sober and clean. People who don't have a problem with it, it's not a problem. But for me, I had to, before I ever had children, I got sober. So I understand that the lies that come with that. And so in order to be honest with our children and have them be honest with us, we first have to be honest with ourselves. Do we have a addiction that we need to deal with? Do we have some baggage from our past that we need to deal with? So that's what this lesson is about. Looking at ourselves so that we can be better parents and create better humans in our families. So, okay, so I'm going to have you write down if there are any things that you know honestly in your heart that you need to work on. Write those down. And if there's something that we talked about today that you think would be hard for you to do, write that down. And then we will get together and discuss this. Okay? You have a beautiful evening, afternoon, morning, whenever it is you're watching this. And just remember that you are going to be a great parent. You're going to love your children. And you're going to help them be healthy adults. That is our goal. Okay.